Hello, and welcome to the eManage version 7 video demonstration of the customizable grid layouts functionality. We developed this feature to give users the ability to view data in any grid the way that makes sense for their company. Each grid in eManage version 7 can have multiple layouts with columns hidden, renamed, new columns added, and pre-filtered or grouped. Users with the appropriate rights can save grid layouts for the entire company, but all users can make their own layouts and make them default for the grid they are working in. Users can also make layouts public so other users can see them without having to recreate the layout. Grid layouts can also be saved to a file and shared with eManage version 7 users from other companies. In this video, I'm going to step through the different customization options available in eManage version 7. I will be using the order analysis grid. It has over 100 columns that can be viewed depending on the user or the situation. I'm going to begin by running a point and click analysis query of orders. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the order book date of last quarter. Okay, and this is my order analysis grid. It has about 100, maybe 110 columns in it, each of which can be customized. And we're going to go through and do some of that customization in this video. So the first thing I can do is I can look at all the fields and choose which ones I want by opening up the field chooser. Again, the field chooser has every field that's in the grid, and the checkbox indicates that it is showing in the grid. So I can choose to uncheck certain columns here, and if I take company ID, they're all in alphabetical order, so it's a lot easier to find them as opposed to looking through the grid itself. So if I uncheck company ID, you see that that disappeared from here. Again, anything I want to not view, I can uncheck in here. I can also hide columns by right-clicking and choosing to hide the column. Okay, I can also rename columns by right-clicking on the column header and simply changing the current caption. And I can do that with each column that I want to do here. By right-clicking, I can also change a column's data type. So deposits here, you can see, should be money, should be currency, and it is not. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click and go to data type formatting, go to numeric, and choose currency. When I make items currency, I also can sum up the values. So the little E here is for sum. If you know anything about Excel, you know that it's exactly the same in there. I'm going to click on that, and I have a choice. I can do the average, the count, the maximum, the minimum, and the sum. I can do one or more of these functions. So I'm going to do sum and average. Okay, so it gives me two totals down here at the bottom. If I don't want the average, I can click here and uncheck average, and now I just have my sum. I can also move columns around by simply dragging them and dropping them where I want them. I can also pin columns. So if you're used to Microsoft Excel freezing columns, we can do the same thing here. If I want to keep my project ID up front and my job number up front, and let's say my project name and my bill to company, you can see that when I scroll, now those columns stay put and I am scrolling through the rest of the data. I can also choose to filter my grid by any column or multiple columns. The funnel here is the filter, and it's an Excel 2007 style filter. And I can choose to uncheck all and check off just certain things that I want, or I can do a custom query here with text filters, and I can do equals, does not equal, begins with, ends with, contains, does not contain, or I can do a custom filter. Now, depending on what type of column you're looking at, the options are different. So order book date, the filter is going to look a little different. I can go to date filters and say equals, before, after, between, tomorrow, today, yesterday, next week, this week, next week, next month, this month, last month, next quarter, this quarter, last quarter, next year, this year, last year, year to date, and all dates in the period. And I've got quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of the months of the year. And I can also do a custom query, a custom filter. If I'm in a money column, I've got number filters. Equals, does not equal, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, between, and I can also do a custom filter. So in every grid in eManage, we also give you every bit of functionality that we could program, we've exposed so that you can use it yourself. So this little red button down here, every grid in eManage has one. If you click it, it turns green and it gives you a toolbar. Okay, this toolbar has a few components to it. This is your saved grid layout drop-down. So you can see I already have some pre-saved layouts in here, and I can also create new ones. And we'll get to that in a little bit. The magnifying glass is a search. So I can type in, say I want to type in Bank of Hawaii, and I want to find first. Okay, you can see that my indicator here has gone to the first Bank of Hawaii. So it's a really quick way to find any text inside of the grid. If I go ahead to grid functions, this is where all of the functions are that you can do with eManage 7 grids. Let's start down here at the bottom. Save layout to a file will take your current grid layout and it will save it to a file that can be read by other companies that use eManage. So if you have a friend that has eManage 7, you can send them your layouts and they can apply them. And the load is where that company would load your layout or you would load your layout. Always show the grid toolbar for this grid. By default, when you go into a grid, the button is red down here and you do not see your toolbar. If you choose this, this is on a per grid and per user basis. So if you choose this, every time you run an order analysis query, this toolbar will be showing. Okay. Every grid also can be set for exporting rights. So by default, nobody has the right to export your data to Excel or copy and paste or to print from a grid. You have the ability per grid to set the users that can export. You can also choose to use your groups that are set up in your administrator to give groups of people rights to export or deny those rights. Again, by default, everybody is denied the right to export. So I'm just going to give the administrator account here the right to export so that we can use it later. We have our configure editable fields, and if you want to know more about that, we have a video also in the new features section of our website for configuring the editable fields. Refresh grid reruns your query, the query that it had already run. Displays card view. If you're familiar with Outlook, this will turn your data into cards. If you like to look at things that way, you can do that. And it shows them all the way across the screen instead of the columns up at the top. If I click that again, it brings it back to a grid. And select all rows selects all the rows that are visible in the grid in case you need to do functions on them. View results as SQL. One of the things that's really nice about eManage is every grid will show you the query that it's running to get the data that is in it. So if you have a SQL guru or an IT administrator that knows SQL, they can actually build their own custom queries, and this is a way that they can see where we get our data from so that they can make different queries out of the same query. You can also set the grid font style and size. We have all the system fonts in here, and we have up to 32 point size. So if you have somebody who doesn't see very well, they can adjust their font size and they'll save their layout, and it will always look that way for them. In column functions, you can change the column header captions for any column in here and do them all at once instead of right-clicking and changing them. So if I go here to order name, I can change it here, and it changes in the grid. If I go to bill to company, I'm just going to put some spacing in there. And you can see in the background in my grid, the column header is changing as I type. So this gives you every column, and you can modify the caption header right here. A scroll tip column is a column that will show as a tooltip when you're scrolling down your list. So if I go to, let's go to bill to company. And what that does is while I'm scrolling, I'm just going to sort this by bill to. While I'm scrolling, you can see there's a scroll tip that tells me where I am in the company name, the bill to company name. And if I go to the preview column settings, I'm going to go ahead and choose project scope here. If you're familiar at all with Outlook, you can see that what it does is it puts the scope of work as the preview as it does in Outlook with portions of your email. And you can tell it the max number of lines you want to use for that preview. If I say 5, okay, that'll give me up to 5 lines of the scope of work. And I can also disable the preview column, and that brings it back to normal. And summary values, I can allow summaries of numeric data. That actually will take away the E or put it back. So if I uncheck that, you see that my E is gone. Any totals that I already have set up will not disappear, but I will not be able to create any new ones. You can see here that my total is still there. And if I want to bring it back, and that brings back my E. And I can also choose to show the summary at the bottom of the grid, the top of the grid, and in group by row footers. If I allow grouping by rows of rows by column, that lets me drag and drop columns up here to group this data. So instead of going looking through all those columns, I'm going to use my field chooser, and I'm going to grab the project status. And I'm going to drag that into my group by area. And now all of my data is now grouped by project status along with my subtotals of the column I have totaling with the summary column. And if I want to add a column to that grouping, I can drag another column up here, and now it's double grouped. So if I go and click plus next to project status awarded, it also has a group by salesperson. And so you can see my primary salesperson is here, and it is also broken out my totals. And if I go down one level more, I see the details of those items. To ungroup, just simply drag your columns down, and you're back to normal. If I want to take a date field and drag it up here, order book date, you can see that it breaks it out by every single day. The group by function in Emancipator 7 gives you options to group in a different way. So if I go right click on the grouped column, it gives me options for group by type. Since it's a date field, it's going to give you date options. So I can group by the date, by the year, by the quarter, by the month, or by the hour. So if I choose month here, you see it dropped it down to 3 months. My query was to look at last quarter, so there are 3 quarters in a month, or 3 months in a quarter. And I can see these all by quarter. And you can see this is my January, February, and March. And if I bring that back down, I go back to normal. Again, you can turn on or off grouping right here. If I turn that off, my top section goes away and I'm no longer able to group. If I show the field chooser, that's the same as clicking that button there that I've been doing all along. And I can also hide all columns and show the field chooser. And what that does, since there's 110 columns in here, I may want to build just a few columns in here. So I'm going to go ahead and hide all columns and show the field chooser. You can see that all of the columns are gone. It brings up the field chooser. They're all unchecked. And I can choose to put in whatever data I want without having everything. So I'm going to go ahead and do primary salesperson. I'm going to do the project ID and the bill to customer. And I'm going to do the order sale price. And I'm going to do the actual PO cost. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these into currency columns. And I'm going to sum them up. Now back in my column functions. And one of the unique features to our grids is that you're able to build a formula in a new column. So I'm going to build a new formula, and I'm going to call this the profit dollars. And it brings up my formula builder, and I'm going to tell this that it is the order sale price minus the actual PO cost and minus the actual labor cost. And you can see it built my dollar amounts there for my profit dollars, and I'm going to turn this into currency. And then I'm going to sum it up. And you can see that it's my order sale price minus my actual PO cost and my actual labor cost. I'm going to actually unhide that. And I'm going to sum that up so we can see all of those values. And so now I have my order sale price minus my actual PO cost minus my actual labor cost gives me my profit. Now, to save this layout, I simply go to my toolbar into the drop-down, and I'm going to call this a profit layout. Now, there's a few different options when you're saving the layout. You can choose to make it your default, which is strictly for you as a user. You can choose to make it public so other people can use this layout. And this is delete. So if you make a layout and you want to get rid of it, you choose it and you delete it. If you have the right to be able to save grid layouts for the entire company, this button is saving for the entire company. It will make it the default for everybody who does not have their own default set. And saving it is just to save that layout. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Notice that when it comes back, it's back to the original layout, so I can do more layouts. But if I drop this down, I have my profit layout, and I can either hit enter or I can click the open folder button. And when I do that, my layout comes back with my profit calculation in there. And on row functions, I can do a size all rows at once. And if I choose that, and then I size one of these rows, it makes them all the same size all at once. If I go to size rows based on content, if there's an item that's bigger than another, it will make it fit. I can also choose to size rows individually. So if I size rows individually, I can take one row and make it bigger, and the rest stay the same size. And I can allow row freezing. Row freezing is just like column freezing. So if I want to work with some data here, I can pin certain rows, and you can see they are pinning at the top. So now when I scroll, I am scrolling around my frozen column, or frozen rows here. And again, if I want to save that, I can call this frozen rows, and I can make it default or public or for my entire company, or save it just as one layout. Now, if I want to export this grid, I can go to print, export, and copy because I did give myself the rights, and I can export to Excel. I can do a print preview. I can place the grid in copy mode and copy the selection and paste it into Excel or any other application that will accept it. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my layout for profit layout, and I'm going to go ahead and export this to Excel. And there it is. And if I scroll down to the bottom, it has my totals just like it does in eManage. And that is eManage grid layout functionality. And thank you for watching.